Good day everyone, I am Rosanda Napolitano, first year college, Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Filipino. I am one of the reporters of Group 7 Learning Theories, and my topic is all about Boris Frederick Skinner, the Skinner's operant conditioning, which has already been started by Mr. Romeo Cabic Jr. and I will continue it. Mr. Romeo Cabic Jr. has already discussed who is Boris Frederick Skinner, the meaning of Skinner's operant conditioning, and the components of operant conditioning. Now, I will discuss the basic principles of operant conditioning, the four principles of operant conditioning, and the key concept of operant conditioning. So, the basic principles of operant conditioning. Primary and secondary reinforcers are the both forms of positive reinforcement, which is the process of rewarding a behavior. Primary reinforcement involves a reward that fulfills a biological need. Secondary reinforcers are learned and work via association with primary reinforcers. There are two types of basic principles of operant conditioning, which are the primary and secondary reinforcers. So, the primary reinforcer is occur naturally and do not need to be learned. Primary reinforcers have to do with fulfilling a biological need. Things like food, drink, shelter, and pleasure are all examples of primary reinforcers. Also, an example of primary reinforcement would be giving a dog a treat for sitting down. Another example po is pera. Ito ay matatawag na secondary reinforcement. Maaring gamitin ang pera upang palakasin ang mga pag-uugali dahil magagamit ito upang makakuha ng mga pangunahing pampalakas tulad ng pagkain, damit, at tirahan, at bukod sa iba pang mga bagay. Ang secondary reinforcement ay kilala rin bilang condition reinforcement. And the secondary reinforcer refers to a situation in which a stimulus reinforces a behavior after it has been associated with the primary reinforcer. For example, when you give your dog a food treat and tell him good boy, he's getting both the primary stimulus of the treat and the secondary reinforcement of the verbal praise. So, your dog may not associate the verbal praise with the reward unless you combine it with the food treat. Secondary reinforcement is more powerful than primary reinforcement because it is not tied to biological needs. Halimbawa po, kung ang isang aso ay hindi nagugutom, malamang na hindi siya makinig sa iyong mga utos kung sanay siya na ang pagkain ay isang gantimpala. Similarly, kung ang isang bata ay kakakuha pa lamang ng isang malaking piraso ng cake, she's not going to practice her violin in exchange for a candy. Maaaring gawin niya ito kapalit ng isang star sa kanyang shirt na maaari niyang palitan ng candy mamaya. The four important principles. First, principle of immediacy. It is behavior that brings the instructor and the students closer together in terms of perceived distance. There are two types of immediacy, the verbal and non-verbal immediacy. So, non-verbal immediacy includes behaviors such as smiling, gesturing, moves around the class while teaching, and having a relaxed body language. For example, smiling to your teacher when you see each other. So, sa pamamagitan ng pagngiti ay nagkakaroon yung teacher at student ng pagkamabutihan at pagkakaunawaan kahit hindi sila nag-uusap. Verbal immediacy. It refers to calling on by the students or ask students how they feel about things. For example, asking your students if they are okay. So, nagkakamabutihan o nagkakaunawaan naman dito sa pamamagitan ng pag-uusap. Second, principle of deprivation or satiation. Deprivation. Not having access to something that is highly desirable. For example, kung ang isang sanggol ay nananatiling nakakulong sa isang higaan, hindi siya matututong lumakad. Satiation. It is the opposite of deprivation, refers to having too much. So, kung yung deprivation ay nagkukulang sa gawa, ito naman ay nasasobrahan. At may kasabihan nga po na ang sobra ay nakakasama, gaya na lamang ng example na ito. If a student is receiving jelly beans as reinforcement, it is likely that after a period of time, he or she will tire of them and no longer find them desirable. Dahil po sa lagi siyang may jelly beans, habang tumatagal, nawawalan na siya ng gana. Third, principle of contingency. A future event or circumstance that is possible but cannot be predicted with certainty. So, isang pangyayari sa hinaharap na posibleng mangyari ngunit walang katiyakan. For example, if a mother wants a child to share toys with a sibling, she may after praise with sharing occurs. The child likes the praise so continues to share in order to gain more praise. And the last principle is principle of size. The cost-benefit determine whether a consequence will be effective. So, parang yung kasabihan na the more, the merrier. For example, when supermarkets double the size or of Trulies, people buy 40% more. Kasi pag malaki, magandang klase, mas maraming tatangkilik. Key concept of operant conditioning. So, shaping. It is a process of reinforcing a series of responses that increasingly resemble the desired behavior. For example, when a baby or a toddler learns to walk, they are reinforced for crawling, then standing, then taking one step, a few steps, and finally they are able to walk. Second, chaining. It refers to a process in which required behavior or task is broken down into small steps for its effective learning. For example, a child learning to wash his or her hands independently may start with learning to turn on a faucet. Discrimination. It is a process of using signals, clues to determine one behavior as likely to be reinforced or punished. For example, humans would be a baby who reacts differently to their mother's voice than to a stranger's voice. Generalization. It refers to the ability of an organism dealing with the perception of response to similar stimuli. For example, if eating a particular food causes illness, a person will likely avoid foods that look or smell similar in the future. So, the conclusion of our report is Skinner's operant conditioning is credited with Burroughs Frederick Skinner. It is a type of learning in which behaviors are imitated to earn rewards or avoid punishment. It can be positive or negative.